Everyone, and welcome to the June session of the Paulding Planning Commission. I'd ask right now, if you would, if you have a mobile device or anything that might make noise, turn it off or turn it to silent so it doesn't interrupt the proceedings of the meeting. At this time, we will dispense with the reading of how to participate in a public meeting. If you would like to read up on that, I'm sure on the back table there's some directions. You can take them with you and read them at your leisure. At this time, I'd ask the Planning Commission if you've had a chance to review the minutes from the previous session of this body. Do you have any questions, comments, edits, concerns? I have a motion to approve by Mr. Aston. Do I have a second? I have a second from Mr. Lowe. All in favor?
I will be abstaining since I was at that meeting.
I have, okay, it passes 4-1 and 0 and 1, excuse me. We have an abstention by Mr. Leggett, as he wasn't present at the last meeting.
4-0 and 2.
4-0 and 2, didn't I? Add me to that as 2. You still have to sign it. Whether you like it or not. I'd advise everyone that's going to participate in the meeting today is the applicant. You must be here for the application to be heard. If you're not, you wouldn't know that now. But anyway, you have 15 minutes to present. You will come up to the lectern. You'll state your name, sign in, and address your comments to the chair. You may use all of that time or save some of it for rebuttal. Questions from the Planning Commission to the applicant or anybody standing at that lectern does not count against their time. Neither do questions from the Board of Commissioners if they have any. The opposition, those who would wish to speak against that application or may have questions, comments, or concerns, even if you're not necessarily against it, but you have questions, may speak at that time. You have 15 minutes to present. You can use all of that time. If you got a number of people waiting in line, please be considerate and don't use all the time up. Or if you're going to be saying the same thing, have one person come up and make that statement. All questions, regardless of which side of the application is on, should be directed to the chair at all times, the chair being me. And Mr. Robinson, you have a couple of announcements before we get started.
I do, and good evening, or good afternoon, everyone. Just wanted to let everybody know the application 2019-05Z is application by Aubrey Tyson. That one has been forwarded by staff administratively to the July meeting for a advertising technicality. Application 2019-11Z, Alpha Omega Storall Management LLC, and 2019-09 SUP, also Alpha Omega Storall Management LLC. Those applications have also been forwarded to the July meeting regarding further staff review. And also 2019-12Z, application by Piedmont Residential. That one also has been forwarded by staff to the July meeting for further staff review.
If anyone here has any interest in those applications that have just been announced to be forwarded, they will be at the next meeting in July. So if you're not planning on attending the rest of this meeting, you can leave now if you'd like, or you can wait and see the rest of it. Thank you, everyone, for your patience. So at this point, Mr. Robinson, would you call the first application?
Yes, sir. The first application is 2019-08Z, application by Jerry Johnson to rezone approximately 1.62 acres from B1 General Business to R2 with sewer, which is Seward Suburban Residential District, for a 4-lot residential subdivision. Property is located in land lots 823, 824, District 3, Section 3. It's on the north side of Somerset Drive, east of Dallas Ackworth Highway. It's in Commission Post 4. We have had one call with questions. We've also had an open records request on this one, and it's been recommended approval with 5 printed stipulations. And the applicant is present.
The applicant will please come around, sign in, state your name, and address your comments to the chair. One further thing before Mr. Johnson gets started. This is a recommending body only. We will hear the case, we will give a recommendation at the end of the case, and we will forward it to the appropriate governing body. In this case, all of the applications before us will be forwarded to the Board of Commissioners meeting tonight at 7 o'clock. Y'all switch that up on me sometimes. But at 7 o'clock tonight at the Board of Commissioners meeting. If you have an interest in the application that's going to be heard, you need to be present at that meeting as well. Mr. Johnson.
Good afternoon. My name is Jerry Johnson. I live at 31 Westbrook Drive here in Post 4 in the same district that this property is located in. I'd like to thank the members of the Planning Commission, Board of Commissioners, and staff for considering this application today. And as stated in the application, I'm asking to rezone 1.62 acres located at the northwest corner of the intersection of Dallas-Ackworth Highway and Somerset Boulevard from B1 to an R2 with sewer. I've had a chance to review the staff's recommended stipulations and the staff's comments regarding the property and in agreement with the opinions and the stipulations that they've offered as written. As far as the use of the property, I'm planning 4 residential lots there that will comply with the R2 with sewer zoning district, which would require 15,000 square foot lots, 85-foot lot widths, and minimum 1,800 square foot homes to be constructed there. The project will, for the most part, will utilize existing infrastructure. This property is located along a road that's already in place and been constructed and accepted by Paulding DOT for maintenance when the Somerset subdivision was constructed. There is public sewer along the west property line of the project. Public water is located within the right-of-way of Somerset Boulevard, right in front of the property. We've got other public utilities, gas, water, electricity, telephone, located in that right-of-way as well that we plan to utilize. Our access to the lots will be off of Somerset Boulevard, and those will be coordinated with DOT at time of building permit. Storm drainage, as far as storm drainage goes, there was a storm drainage system that was previously constructed to convey stormwater runoff from this development to a detention pond that's on the property across the street, across Somerset Boulevard. That will be providing all of the stormwater control for the project. It's pretty straightforward, but I'd like to reserve any remaining time that I have for any rebuttals that may need to come up.
In your comments, Mr. Johnson, I know you're familiar with the processes, having been in Paulding County and working with development for a while, that infrastructure-related items, as they may come into question, would be addressed at the plan review with Paulding County for that development.
That's correct. We're planning on submitting construction plans for sewer extension. We've got to extend sewer from the west property line over to the easternmost lot. And the driveways will not be put in until the houses are ready for building, just like they would in a typical subdivision. So those will be coordinated with DOT during plan review for the infrastructure improvements, and also at building stage, just to make sure that the builders is placing those drives where they are most appropriate for access.
And for information for the others in attendance, that also means, as far as infrastructure, your transportation, your water, your sewer, as well as stormwater will also be covered in plan review. And you'll be required at that time to meet development standards of Paulding County in order to proceed with the development.
Correct.
If it's favorably approved by the Board of Commissioners.
That's correct. We understand.
Are there any questions to the applicant from the Planning Commission?
So my understanding, this is not part of the Somerset community then, is that correct?
No.
Okay.
That is correct. It is not part of
Okay, I'm sorry,
the-
that was,
yeah, I just want to
understood.
And you said the houses would be 1,800 square feet?
The current zoning requires minimum 1,800 square feet. Well, not the current zoning ordinances for R2 with sewer require a minimum of 1,800 square feet. In comparison, the Somerset subdivision is zoned PRD, which I think requires a minimum of 1,600 square feet. So it's compatible with what is existing in the subdivision that we're adjoining.
Any other questions from the Planning Commission? Board of Commissioners, any questions to the applicant? Thank you, Mr. Johnson.
Okay, thank you.
Is there anyone else here that would wish to speak on behalf of this application? On behalf of the application, please come around, sign in, state your name, and address your comments to the chair. Hearing none, is there anyone that would wish to speak in opposition to this application or may have questions, comments, or concerns? Please come around, line up, sign in, one at a time as you speak, and then state your name and address your comments to the chair.
Good afternoon.
Good
I
afternoon.
live in the Somerset community, and I do have a few questions regarding the development of these properties because,
If you haven't signed in, please do so and state
okay.
your name so that we'll know who we're speaking with.
my name is Lachelle Lewis,
Michelle Lewis. Thank you.
and I'm here because most of the properties on Somerset have at least 3,000 square feet. I know that the applicant did state that it only requires by law 1,600 to 1,800 square feet. That's the requirement. But I would like to keep with the aesthetics of the community. And I also have a concern regarding getting in and out. I have looked at the property. I know it's 1.64 acres. I don't know how, I would like the applicant to explain how he's able to build a road to go there so that we can continue to access our property as well as be able to build a driveway and other properties along that property line because it's really not that much room. So I was wondering if he does have any type of information from Paulding County as to how he's going to be able to build a in and out driveway for those of us who live there, because right now there's just not enough easement in order for us to get in and out if he were to build something. Or is it going to be along Dallas Eckworth Highway? Is it going to be along Somerset Drive? How is that going to happen?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, my name is Ben Avis. I have been the Somerset HOA's president previously. I'm not currently on the board. I just advise them and counsel them in a historical manner. We've looked at that lot before. We tried to acquire that lot previously, and the price for that lot was set at $80,000 at the time. The open records request showed us that that land was actually purchased for a $10 handshake deal. So we definitely had some questions as to why that would proceed as such, especially when that wasn't addressed to the community as that was a plan that wasn't asked to anybody else. I understand that they don't have to ask that by any means, but it would have been nice to know, especially seeing that the signing authority on the sale of the lot is also a board member in the same community. It definitely seems strangely almost conflict of interest, like that the seller wouldn't have authorized us to appropriate that same property by that whatever deal was struck between the two. It almost seems as if somebody was trying to do a backhanded deal with it. The lot itself is very small. The existing cut-in driveway is obviously able to be changed, but really doesn't appear to be much driveway coming in off of that first Somerset lane there. When asked around with the community, we definitely asked to see if that was able to be acquired into the subdivision. We would definitely love to see that there. It would offer them a chance to use the amenities there with us. Especially when we've already kind of worked pretty hard to establish the value of those homes there. We've hammered it pretty hard, and we've been trying to just continue to increase the property value out there as a whole. I'd hate to see something that completely doesn't fit in line with that, especially when it's going to be viewed exactly as part of that community. That's going to be the 4 front lots. It appears to what it's going to be. We would just like to see that either is enfolded into the existing community, or at least try to match the appearance of. So that's all.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
I'd like to ask him a question. Since you've been involved in the homeowner association,
Yes, sir.
what would you say the average size of the homes are as far as square footage?
Of the 158 developed homes, there are approximately 2,500 square foot homes. If I had to average all of them together, that'd be about right. The newer ones that were added out of our extension were smaller. There are some that are 18, but the majority of those are about 2,300.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hello. My name is Paula Dobbs. I actually am on the board of the HOA with Somerset. So the question that I have is regarding if this is approved, the construction, how will Somerset Boulevard basically be free of any debris from construction? The roadways being blocked, preventing vehicles, buses from getting in and out of the subdivision. Also, will this, I understand they said it won't be a part of Somerset, but will it eventually be asked if they can be a part? And the average home size, my home is 3,500 square feet, so most of the homes fall within 2,700 to 3,500 square feet within our subdivision. And I think Ben and Lachelle pretty much covered everything else. Thank you all.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would wish to speak in opposition or may have questions, comments, or concerns? Please come to the lectern, sign in, and state your name, and address your comments to the chair.
Excuse me. Hi, I'm Dina Moore, and I also live in Somerset. I just have a question because it's very narrow there, and we share on that other side with a church that meets a couple times a week, and if the builder is going to make 4 driveways to come out, they can only take that right turn. So then they would use the roundabout. We share the roundabout with Parker Road, the homes on Parker Road, our subdivision, the church as well, and then now these homes. We have 5 school buses that come through our subdivision. We have, I think, 3 or 4 trash companies already. So that road, I could see it as being blocked. Also, when you turn into our subdivision, okay, it's a divided highway, I believe, or something like that, but you're exiting 45 miles per hour minimum, and you've got it quick. You've got a quick turn. So if there's a home there, and I mean, it is very small. If there are children, if there are a ball that you were to go across the street, I mean, I just see it as a safety thing for the communities, both of them, if people were going to live there or in ours as well. It's just very congested there. And also I don't know, developer or builder, Mr. Johnson, said that he was going to pull off of the pond, the retention pond. I believe that we maintain that. Is that, oh, they have a different one? Okay, all right, so that was it.
Thank you, Ms. Moore.
Paula Dobbs again. Quick question, will the subdivision be maintained by an HOA? If so, standing in with the rules of Somerset, basically that there is no street parking, and as it was presented before, that roadway is very narrow. So if there is street parking that is allowed with these homes being built there, it will cause a traffic jam. People will not be able to get around those vehicles. So that would be something that would need to be included within the covenants if it's a subdivision that will be governed by an HOA, or it will need to be addressed regarding street parking, overnight parking for this planned development. So thank you.
Is there anyone that wishes to speak in opposition or have questions, comments, or concerns regarding this application? Hearing none at this point, Mr. Johnson, would you please come back? We've received a number of comments, as you've heard. Some of them are items that would be addressed during plan review, where you have the professional staff of the county that would be reviewing the proposed design plans for the development that Mr. Johnson represents, and they would apply the development standards to them in that process. Ours is to consider whether or not the proposed use and the rezoning that we're talking about is appropriate for the location. And really, it's not that much more complicated than that. But understanding that there's concerns that have been voiced, I don't know if you took notes, but I'll help you through that if you would like. But if you would like to begin with some time to address that.
Sure. So access to the lots, again, I stated that we would be accessing via Somerset Boulevard. This subdivision configuration is typical to what you would see for any other typical subdivision in Paulding County, with lots fronting, the main entrance road. And again, we're going to work out with DOT locations of these drives during the plan review process. I believe that's one of the stipulations that's recommended for the rezoning. So I really don't feel that that's going to be an issue. As far as the matters related to the HOA, the zoning ordinances require the R2 with sewer to have an HOA that governs the subdivision, as well as maintain an open space. And I believe there were a few questions about whether this property would be interested in joining the existing Somerset HOA. I think that is an option that we could probably discuss with them and review their current covenants and bylaws and any other documentation that they have, and definitely give some good consideration to doing that. That may be the best option as far as there being a requirement for it, and then trying to provide something that's consistent for the neighborhood there. The house sizes, I don't know what to say about that, other than that the existing subdivision only required a minimum of 1,600. Somebody chose to build larger. The zoning we're seeking requires a minimum of 1,800. Again, the builder, depending on their sales and the people, their purchasers, their customers, may build something much larger. I don't know. I couldn't say that they definitely would. Construction traffic, it's going to be what it is. It's typical. We've been building subdivisions in Paulding County for a long time. I think that the county has a system in place with inspectors and with ordinances and with county marshals that they can use to keep that from being a nuisance to any of the existing homeowners in the subdivision. Street parking, we've got required 30-foot front setbacks, so there should be no garage any closer than 30 feet. That should leave about 40 feet from the back of curb to the front of the house, which should allow for plenty of parking in the driveway. I don't see that there would be a need for anyone to be parking on that road, certainly with it being divided and there being a possibility they could block emergency vehicles. But there should be plenty of driveway length there to park up to 4 vehicles outside of the garage. So it would be more if they parked in the garage. Regarding the transaction of the property, I don't know what to say about that. This property was
I don't
legally acquired.
believe, and Mr. Phillips can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe that this forum was really equipped to handle the legalities of a property transaction.
You're correct. This would, in prices on deeds, while they often say $10, you got to look at some other areas, for instance, the PT 61, to see what the transfer tax was, and you can determine the price then. But yes, price is not an issue for this group to consider.
I believe I've covered most of them.
I think there was a concern that was mentioned by one of our speakers that access to the subdivision itself coming off of Dallas-Ackworth Highway is a pretty quick, and I'm very familiar with that highway. I think most people who travel in Paulding County have been on it at some point in their time here. And it is a busy road, and it does have a higher speed. So the concern is navigating into the subdivision without it presenting a safety concern to either the occupants who are going to be in these houses or kids that may be walking down the street. Is there any plans on the part of the developer to, you'll have to work with the DOT in plan review. Again, I'm not trying to engineer the job for you. That's not what we do. But is there a plan or is there a requirement that would cause you to have to place a deceleration lane that isn't, or augment the existing one if there is one already in place?
There is an existing deceleration lane. Though I don't believe it would be possible to augment it just due to the existing conditions of the drive that's located just north of it. But again, that is ultimately going to be the final decision of Paulding DOT. In my opinion, I don't see a way to physically do anything on Dallas-Ackworth Highway. One of the zoning conditions is asked that we've agreed to give an additional 10 feet of right-of-way so that the county can make some improvements on a future project there along Dallas-Ackworth Highway. So I think with a project being planned there, that they're probably already considering all of the safety measures that they need to access these developments along that corridor.
I have a question. Is there a possibility you could use Parker Road as your ingress and egress from that development?
That would,
Mr. Leggett,
Yes.
we abandoned Parker Road a few years back. It was spaced too closely to Somerset Drive. We like roads to be spaced out a little bit further, so it was actually better for safety to close Parker Road as a full access and leave Somerset Drive as the...
Regarding one of the questions was regarding, again, you had alluded to utilizing the stormwater pond that's already in place for the existing development. Have you already acquired the rights in order to do so, or is that something that you would have to do pending the results of this application moving forward?
This property was sold to me by the owner of the property where the pond is located. And it's my understanding that when that property was developed, that they sized the detention facility to accommodate stormwater runoff for both parcels. So that is already in place and would not need to be acquired.
And again, this would be, again, it would go more toward plan review, but
That's
as
right.
the question was asked, and if you have the answer, you would have to submit to what plan review requirements are for the permeable, non-permeable area that you're creating, meaning the rooftops and driveways that will not absorb the water. They will run off, and you feel the pond would be sized appropriately to handle that as it exists already.
Yes, and we'll have to submit documentation to the Paulding County Development Department for review when we submit our plans for the other utilities. They'll review the hydrology report to see that it's in conformance with all of the stormwater management ordinances that the county has, and make sure that we're not exceeding the capacity of what that pond has been allotted for this particular piece of property.
One of the initials questions asked was regarding the size of the house, which you've already addressed, as to what is allowable under the ordinance. There's a concern as far as the aesthetic, how it will work with the existing community. You know, you don't want to see your property values decrease because there's hopefully not going to be an inferior product in front of it, but a different product in front of it. Do you have anything to add to that?
Not much to add, other than that if there's an interest of the HOA to have some additional members, and we can review their current architectural guidelines and make an agreement to make this part of their HOA, then that would create a mechanism for keeping these homes in conformance with what they're already have in the existing subdivision.
And it's not intentional to put you on the spot, but we have obviously a current member of the HOA and then a former member of the HOA, but you would be willing to have that conversation with them outside of the purview of this meeting.
Sure would.
Are there any other questions to the applicant, or do you have anything further you would like to say?
I have nothing else, but would be glad to answer any additional questions.
Planning Commission, any questions to the applicant? Board of Commissioners, any questions to the applicant? Thank you, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you.
As we had quite a few questions that came from those in attendance here, are there any questions that the Planning Commission may have to staff?
Just the possibility of the Somerset Drive medians, are they grass or cement or?
They're raised medians. It's
Okay.
yes, curved.
Okay. I guess my only question would be, could those be potentially removed to widen the road?
I particularly like medians. They have a safety aspect.
Right.
They keep people from crossing in the other side. I think
Right.
as long as folks don't park in the roadway, and it's a county ordinance that we're
Right.
not supposed to park
Right.
blocking roads, I think, that's the big thing. If we just get people to do the right thing,
Okay.
we'll all be all right.
And I'm very glad that you mentioned that being a part of the county ordinances of no on-street parking. That is not just a HOA covenant. So if you do see that, there is a remedy. Are there any other questions to the staff? Hearing none, at this time, I will entertain a motion regarding application 2019-08-Z.
Motion to approve with all 5 stipulations.
I have a motion to approve from Mr. Lowe with all 5 stipulations. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second from Ms. Turnbull. All in favor? Motion passes 5-0 and 1. And again, this is not the final action on this application. It will be forwarded to tonight's meeting of the Board of Commissioners. If you have an interest, the applicant, you must be present, but if you have an interest, I would advise you be present. Give us just a moment, Mr. Robinson. Please proceed.
Okay, next application, excuse me. 2019-09Z application by Thomas Lim to rezone approximately 0.65 acres from R2 Suburban Residential District to B1 General Business District for a fuel station convenience store. Property is located in land lot 399, District 2, Section 3. It's on the north side of Old Mill Road, south of Macklin Road. It's in Commission Post 1. Staff has recommended approval with 4 conditions or stipulations. And we have had 1 call with questions and 1 open records request on this one. Applicant is present.
Thank you. The applicant will please come around, sign in, state your name, and address your comments to the chair.
Okay, my name is Thomas Lim. This is about 3278 Macklin Road. I would like to request for commercial zoning to have a convenience store and gas station established.
Thank you, Mr. Lim. Would ask, are you familiar with the 4 stipulations recommended by the county?
No.
Mr. Robinson, do you care to show him the stipulations? Have you had a chance to review the stipulations?
Just now.
Are you agreeable to them?
Yes, sir.
Are there any questions to the applicant from the Planning Commission? Board of Commissioners, any questions to the applicant? Mr. Hart?
Now, we were just wondering, is there sewer here?
Ms. Ashmore, is there sewer in this location?
There is not sewer directly at this property.
There is not sewer availability directly at this property.
It's down that little side road.
Yes.
How far?
Would you pass the microphone over to Ms. Ashmore, please?
I don't know exact distance, but it's in excess of 1,000 feet.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Ashmore. Are there any other questions from the Board of Commissioners to the applicant?
I'll have one for
Mr.
Mr.
Davis, yes,
Robinson
sir.
when the time is appropriate. I'll have one for Mr. Robinson when the time is appropriate, if you don't want to answer
Okay.
that now. I was just getting the microphone from them.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Lim. You can take your seat and reserve the remainder of your time, unless you have other questions from the Planning Commission. Thank you. Is there anyone else here that would wish to speak on behalf of this application? Is there anyone wishing to speak in opposition to this application or may have questions, comments, or concerns? Hearing none at this time, Mr. Davis, if you would like to ask a question of the staff.
I do have a question for Chris, if I could. Chris, this borders a piece of property that is zoned residential. Can you clarify the setback there, or what would shield the residential from the business property?
I want to point this out because could be changes in the future along the right-of-way there.
Right.
Eventually, Old Mill Road would be aligning here, which would be more of a second road frontage. If this is abandoned over here, then where it touches the residential district here would require a 25-foot buffer. At this moment, since this is public right-of-way, that setback to the west side is reduced. Even though there's not a road there, it's been obtained by Georgia Department of Transportation. Is that?
We're good.
Are there any further questions from the Board of Commissioners? Planning Commission? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion with regard to application 2019-09-Z.
Motion to approve with all 4
I
stipulations.
have a motion to approve from Mr. Lowe with all 4 stipulations. I have a second from Mr. what's your name? Leggett. All in favor? Motion passes 5-0 and 1. ready, Mr. Robinson.
Thank you. Next application, 2019-10Z, application by Raj Laliwala to rezone approximately 15.503 acres from R2 Suburban Residential District to B2 Highway Business for commercial grocery retail center. Property is located in land lot 256, District 2, Section 3. It's on the southwest side of Charles Hardy Parkway, also known as State Route 120, north of Willow Point Drive. It's in Commission Post 1. We've had 2 calls with questions. 1 person came by the office with questions, 2 open records requests, and a letter of opposition. Staff is recommending approval with 6 conditions of approval. And applicant is present.
If the applicant will please come around, sign in, state your name, and address your comments to the chair.
Good afternoon, Planning Commission and the Board Commissioners. We just proposing,
Before you get started, go ahead and if you didn't do so, state your name.
Sure, my name is Raj Laliwala, and that's my wife, Smita Laliwala.
All right. Please proceed.
And this application is to rezone 15.503 acres of R2 Suburban Residential to District B2 Highway Business for commercial grocery and retail center. The applicant's concept site plan identifies the possible construction of approximately 44,550 square foot of commercial retail space. The site is located on the south side of Charles Hardy Parkway, west of Sedgefield Drive. The proposed entrance to the site is planned from Charles Hardy Parkway, which would require the Georgia Department of Transportation's approval.
Is that your presentation? Okay. Are you familiar with the 6 listed stipulations that
Yes, sir.
the county is recommending? You're agreeing with them?
Yes, sir.
Are there any questions to Mr. Laliwala regarding this application from the Planning Commission? Board of Commissioners, any questions to the applicant? Mr.
I do
Davis?
have one, sir. I've been asked about the proposed use and the target. Could you clarify, is this a rezone to target someone specific? Do you have a specific use in mind other than what is listed here as potential?
No, we do not.
There's going to be a required buffer between business and residential properties. Chris, real quickly, you keep these numbers better in your head than I do.
I thought this may help me a little bit. Back in the rear part, there's a stream and a lake. I have estimated, based on the site plan that was submitted as a zoning concept, back to Willow Point subdivision to the nearest properties is well over 300 feet of natural buffer. The B2 district requires a 40-foot buffer, but because of the lake and the water sources back there, it would allow a much larger buffer in the rear.
And that would be undisturbed?
And that would be undisturbed.
Okay. What about to the right
Back
side of
to
the
the
street?
east over towards Sedgefield, there's another property in between the 2 tracks itself, which, except for this area here, which I believe is in the homeowners association. This is a separate track here. They would be required to have a 40-foot buffer along this side, but there's also a creek that runs in this portion too, which increases that buffer also to anywhere to 100 feet or more.
What's the zoning on that property that backs up to Sedgefield?
This one is zoned residential, R2 residential. And then over on the Hope Church side, along this line here would be the smallest buffer. It would be a 40-foot buffer. And if the church and everybody's okay, the Highway Overlay District would allow connectivity there also, if it's possible, if they would like.
So where I was going with that was going up against the subdivisions. So what I understand is there's, I guess, is that south, to the south there, it's more than sufficient for enough space back up into that neighborhood because of the lake. And then on the eastern side, an abundance of undisturbed.
Yes, this right here, this line down here is the 40-foot buffer.
Right.
As you can see here, but as you see, it goes way out
I see. Okay.
in that particular one.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions to the applicant from the Board of Commissioners? Planning Commission? Thank you very much. You can take your seat. Is there anyone else that would wish to speak on behalf of this application? Hearing none, is there any that would wish to speak in opposition or may have questions, comments, or concerns? Again, please line up. When you get to the lectern, you will sign in, state your name, and address your comments to the chair.
Good afternoon. My name is Michelle Benoit, and I reside in Hunters Glen subdivision, which is across 120 from where this proposed project is going to be developed. I don't have any issues with boundaries and buffers and so forth. I think those have all been thought out very well and thoughtfully. My one concern is when I see the number of parking spaces that have been put on this plan, 265 parking spaces. That's a lot of traffic on that area. I know it's busy now. It's planned to get busier in the future. And so I have had a previous conversation about a traffic study being done specifically for where Hunters Glen and Sedgefield intersect with 120. I have been known to have to wait 9 or 10 minutes to get out of there if, at those busy times of day. We could really use a right turn lane out of there and some traffic signals. So just in the thought of seeing so many parking spaces on this planned project, that tells me there's going to be even more traffic coming to the area. And so I just respectfully request that we keep those sorts of things in mind for the quality of life of the people that do live in that area. And I thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Benoit.
Hi, my name is Jessica Kengor, and I live in Sedgefield. I don't know if you can tell from the map, it's lot 147 that comes down on the bottom before it starts up again.
Could I get your last name one more time? I'm
Ken,
sorry.
Kengor.
Thank you.
And I agree with her concern as well, because that will affect our traffic, I believe, as well as hers. But my main concern is they were talking about the easement, and it's specified in the paperwork that it was 40 feet, but it was extended greatly. So is that 40 feet from the creek, or is that 40 feet from, because our house is
You're talking about
required
the
to be-
easement or the buffer?
Sorry, the buffer.
Okay.
Because our house is required to be 40-foot property line from the creek, so I was wondering if they were going to be required to be 40 foot from the creek as well. Because as you see towards the bottom there, I know the creek goes up and away from the houses, but towards the middle on down, that could get kind of close. And also my concern is with that much pavement, we've already had problems with flooding along the bottom lines of those houses, and that the existing lake has a runoff into the stream, and I'm wondering, is the retention pond also going to run off into that stream? Because that's going to greatly affect how the water moves from that property into our property as well. That's it. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Pamela Crosswhite. I'm the building administrator at Hope Church. I just wanted to be here to represent Hope Church and also remind you that we are a Methodist church as well as we host a preschool. So we do have concerns of the amount of traffic that this will bring to near our preschool property. But they're going to have to be, I guess, concerned with all of the other development that's going on around us. So I just wanted to be sure that there was going to be a buffer between us and the store. And I believe if we leave the natural one up there, it may be enough for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, we had a number of questions, so I think most of these may need to have some input from the staff and maybe minimal discussion on it, but the parking spaces, the stormwater detention pond, the buffers, stream bank buffers, the non-disturbance buffer between properties are all items that are typically handled within plan review, where you have the professional staff of the county, the civil engineers and planners, from all aspects of development will sit around a table and tell them exactly what they can and cannot do with regard to this development, what standards they have to comply with and what development regulations are in place for them. Regarding parking spaces, I think that would be handled either by Chris or by transportation. So would one of you just care to speak on that?
Regarding parking spaces, you're looking at the land use, the type of building size, and I believe in the, our regulations, it specifies, the zoning, what size building is going to require how many spaces per this building size and the land use.
Then regarding the detention pond, because there was a concern about the expanse of asphalt that would be placed for the parking area, for the parking spots, the detention pond will have to be sized according to the amount of impermeable, meaning water will not absorb to it, how much water runoff that will create. The county will work with the engineer of the applicant if this goes forward, where they have to put in place a pond that will retain all of the water that they are displacing, where it will settle out and clear itself before it discharges to a stream, if indeed it does. Not certain, Chris, if you want to address that?
And Mr. Jones is correct. It's normal on a retail, it's 200 square feet, one parking space for every 200 square feet of net floor space in a retail development on the average, is how the number is usually based. I did want to clarify on the eastern side where the stream lies and the 40-foot that one of the speakers mentioned that their house had to be 40 feet from the stream bank. Back when Sedgefield was developed, that was the minimal requirement of a 40-foot stream buffer. As of today, our stream buffer requirement is 75 feet from that creek bank. If Sedgefield was built today, it would have been 75 feet. I was just wanted to clarify that a little bit.
There's a greater requirement in place now than there used to be.
Yes.
Plus, you're dealing with already existing water amenities, being a lake or a pond and creeks running along the backside that are already in place. That has to be accounted for as well.
That's correct.
And is that developable?
That is not developable.
Okay.
Chris, what constitutes having a traffic study in these planning and zoning application? Who requests that?
That being and I don't want to answer for George, but that is a state-controlled highway. The state, they will look at these projects. They have to go and have their entrances approved by the state of Georgia, and they could deem some traffic study or consideration out there.
Yeah, I noticed one of the other applications that's been forwarded had a traffic study with it, and I thought that highway was controlled by the Georgia Department of Transportation as well. We won't get into that. I just, for my own information purposes, just like to know that. That's fine.
Thank you.
Mr. Davis.
Mr. Chairman, if I could speak to what Mr. Aston was just saying, in a previous planning zoning meeting with another retailer looking to come in farther down 120, there was talk of a traffic study for a light to go in front of that development. And some citizens from these two subdivisions had asked about traffic study and a possible light. And so to get a baseline for where traffic is right now before this development comes, we asked the state DOT to do a traffic study. I believe that study's been completed, but I don't think the results are in, but I think the study is done. George, you can correct me if that's wrong. But the idea was to get a baseline. If we can't justify a traffic light there now, then we can at least have a baseline to show what the increase is a number of years into the future, to show the increase and potentially justify one at that time.
Commissioner Davis, I believe the Costco study is complete. The Sedgefield, Hunter's Glen is not. I haven't received any notification from GDOT that it has been completed at this time.
Okay, so I had those confused, but that was what was talked about, the traffic study in a previous planning and zoning meeting.
One of the last items that was mentioned was the representative from the Methodist Church next door. Mr. Robinson, in your comments, you had alluded to the possibility of interparcel connectivity. Is that's something that they would have to approach the church before that would ever happen? And otherwise, there would be a buffer in place. Is that correct?
There is a buffer that would be required of the 40 feet against the residential. But we also have a highway overlay district that this development would be subject to, which would require connectivity to adjoining properties. The adjoining property to the east would be very difficult, but it could be possible to at least put a connector to the property line of this proposed development for future access to the church property. But it would, they would have to work an agreement out with the church.
Okay. Are there any other questions to the staff from the Planning Commission or the Board of Commissioners? At this time, I will entertain a motion with regard to application 2019-10-Z.
Motion to approve with all 6 stipulations.
I have a motion to approve with all 6 listed stipulations from Mr. Lowe. I have a second from Ms. Turnbull. All in favor? Motion passes 5-0 and 1. And again, this will be forwarded, all 3 of these applications will be forwarded to the Board of Commissioners meeting tonight at 7 o'clock for their consideration. If you have an interest, please be there. If you're the applicant, you must be there for it to be considered. At this time, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn by Mr. Lowe, second by Ms. Turnbull. All in favor? Motion passes 5-0 and 1.